being celebrated on Monday. And, I just want to endorse what she said and to say as well that, you see, us as believers, we compromise a lot. We really do compromise because we don't want to offend people. We compromise because we don't want to make them feel bad. So we would go and partake, we would do certain things, and it's not right. We have got to, as I say, I was going to say something, but before I say it, let me say this. A couple of days ago, there's this song that's been ringing in my head, and it's an old song, an old Catholic song that we used to sing. And I was just going to say something, and as I was saying it, the words of the song came back because of the very same words I was just going to say. That is, we've got to stand together for what we believe. We've got to stand together. And too often we're not standing for what we believe. And sometimes if it's difficult to stand alone, let's stand together. The song says, stand together for what you believe, work for what must be done, love each other in all that you do, till all my people are one. We've got to learn, we've got to come to that place where we stand together. This is what we believe. Let us stand for Christ. We have been pushed out slowly. Look at the whole LGBTQ plus agenda, where we now becoming the wrong ones. We want to infringe on their rights, and those are the things that we are being accused of. And so we have to stand up, because God is still God and his principles remain forever. What is right, what is wrong. And it doesn't matter how much the world changes. It doesn't matter how modern we are. The principles of God are eternal. So we've got to stand for those principles always, always. Okay? So let us stop compromising and let us say, listen, I'm a believer, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, and I cannot do this. I'm very sorry. You apologize if you have to, but I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. I believe in, what God says. You don't have to knock people for what they do or what they believe. You don't have to criticize what they believe. All you've got to do is say what you believe and what you will be led to do. That's what you need to do. Judah, come please. And so let's just continue where we left off last evening. For those of you who are new, we have been talking about forgiveness. Forgiveness. This thing about releasing each other when we do wrong, when we offend one another. Too many of us are easily offended in the first place, and those of us who are offended sometimes find it difficult to forgive people, to release people. And that's what we are talking about. And we're looking at the reasons why it is difficult to forgive. We looked at some of the reasons last evening, and if I may just perhaps, in fact, the last thing we did was we did the story of Jonah. And Jonah did not like the Assyrians when God had told him to go to Nineveh to preach to the people. Nineveh, which was the capital of Assyria. Jonah did not like the Assyrians. In fact, most Jews didn't like them because they were wicked and bad and cruel and all of that. But if God calls you to go and preach to whoever it is, the wickedest, and I'm using a coining a word now, the wickedest and baddest person on this earth, if God tells you to carry the gospel to them, that's what you have to do. Jesus Christ came down on this earth and all the filth and all the sin and everything. He came to us to save us. So we ought not to not remember that. We ought not to not remember it. We ought to remember it. We ought to remember what Jesus did for us. And if he sends us to whomever, then we are supposed to go willingly. And Jonah didn't do that, but you see what happened. So we want to continue, excuse me, we want to continue asking the question, why is it that it is so difficult to forgive people? What are the challenges that we have? And the fourth reason is because sometimes we think when we forgive people, it means that things have to go back the way it was. Let me say that again. Sometimes we feel that when we forgive people, it means that things have to go back the way it was. And I know Sister Patricia asked this question the other night. I don't know if she's on tonight, but I'm hoping that she's here because I gave her the short answer, but let's look at it, a little bit in depth. Forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation. Forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation. Sometimes one has nothing to do with the other. And so the person who is to forgive the person who has been wronged, because they're thinking that I have to go back in this situation, I have to go back to this person. You don't forgive the person because you think that by forgiving them, it means, okay, I accept what you did and let's do it again. And usually that is what the offender wants. He or she wants to go back to the way things were before, business as usual. But that is not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is more than just that. And you see, because sometimes trust is broken in such a way that reconciliation isn't in your best interest. Now, I want you to listen to me carefully. Sometimes because trust is broken in a relationship, imagine you and a person, they are so close, a husband and a wife. You're going good, everybody knows you as tight. They look at you as an example, and you give your all to the person gives their all to you, but so you're thinking, and then bam, somebody breaks that trust. Somebody shatters that relationship, somebody shatters that rock. And it is difficult. You know, a lot of times people say to me, and they've said it many times, come to me, pray for my wife to come back. Pray for my husband to come back. And I would always say to them, come back to what? You want them to come back to the same situation that they ran away from? You want them to come back to the same situation that gave them hell? Are you going to be different if they come back? You've got to understand that sometimes when things are broken, they can't be fixed. Someone sent me, I don't remember if I put it in the chat, you know, these forwards. And the person in the forward had a plate, told the person to take a plate. I'm trying to remember exactly how it went. And they said, okay, drop the plate on the ground. And the plate was dropped on the ground. And he said, okay, tell the plate you're sorry now. And he said, sorry. He said, did the plate come back together again? Is it back to the way it was before? The person said no. And that was the message. Sometimes we shatter things, it just cannot be fixed. No, I'm not, again, let me say, as my wife usually said, don't hear what I'm not saying. There are situations that they're not just broken, they are shattered. And even though you forgive the person, the relationship itself has gone through such an experience, an ordeal, that it has been shattered beyond fixing. And so you cannot put it back together again. And this is what the person who has been offended sometimes thinks about that. And they realize, that, listen, if I forgive this person, it means that I have to try and get all the pieces together again. And when something is shattered, you take your hands and try to put it back together again. You cut up your hands. All you can do is take a duster, you know, the scoop, and scoop it and throw it in the bin. That is for certain circumstances. So what I'm saying is forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. It doesn't always mean that we're going back to the way it was before. You and your wife, you're married and you are unfaithful. You're unfaithful to your husband. You're unfaithful to your wife. What if you contracted AIDS out there? What if you picked up an STD, a sexually transmitted disease? Will it be business as usual? You just come, and this is what goes into the mind of the person who's offended. You went and you were unfaithful with somebody else. You can bring a disease home to me. And they're fearful of that. So they say, you know, the best thing to do is I don't want to have anything to do with that person. And reconciliation doesn't, well, forgiveness doesn't take place because you're afraid, the person's afraid to go back to that situation before. That is what, as it was before, because they go into the situation and now there might be additional things. What if there was a problem, an addiction? What if the issue was a drug addiction? Or the person was addicted to sex, or they were addicted to pornography, or they were addicted to gambling and they went and they gambled all the money. You think that somebody can just easily forgive you? No. What if the offender was abusive? So you're thinking all that. You cannot go back to that situation because of the fact that the person was abusing you. They were on drugs. They were gambling. They were involved in pornography. All these things, different situations can come up. And because of that, it is difficult for somebody to forgive because they think forgiveness means, okay, I am going back into that situation again. But I want to say to us, and we need to understand, because some of us may have experienced either side of this coin. Either you were the offender or you were the one who was offended. Forgiveness is very often a process that has to be managed. I want to say that again, and I want you to understand. Forgiveness is very often a process. It's not a one and done thing. It is not you repent and you say sorry and I say I forgive you. Forgiveness is often a process that has to be managed. You have to win back trust, because when trust is broken, it is not easily repaired. And I want to say to some people that sometimes forgiving somebody too quickly without fully processing your emotion or resolving the situation will just make it worse. Let me say that again, because I want you to get this and understand. Sometimes forgiving someone too quickly without fully processing your emotions or resolving it in your heart and in your mind, that can lead to greater problems. So when you go to a counselor, if you come to me and there is a problem, there's an issue, especially if it's infidelity, it is not just, all right, I'm sorry I did that, I made a mistake. And that's what we usually say, whether it's male or female, especially men. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. And most of the time, it's not that the person is sorry. They're sorry that they got caught. They're sorry it's out in the open now. They're sorry that it's been exposed. Because if they were sorry, they would have come out of it, before anything happened, like David. And so it is not just a matter of saying, I am sorry, and let's start over. We have to go through, we have to go back into the cause. What caused this? What caused you to stray? What caused you to look at another woman? What caused you to look at another man? What caused you to end up in somebody else's bed? What is the cause? And a lot of times for us men, and I just throwing this in as an aside, a lot of us men, our wives been talking to us for a long time and saying things, and we don't hear. Because we speak a different language, and we don't hear. And sometimes when things happen, we are so shocked. How could she do this? But she's been telling you all the time that you've been neglecting her. She's been telling you all the time about the way she feels. She's been telling you all the time about the things that you do that she doesn't like. She's been saying that, but to you, a small thing. So it goes into one ear and comes out to the next ear. And I'm talking especially to the men. I'm a man too, I know. And a lot of time, the source of the problem, when we talk about it in therapy, When we talk about it in counseling, we realize that this wasn't just, people don't just commit adultery like that. People don't just abandon their family like that. It leads to that. And so the whole process has to do with finding out what caused it, because if you know what caused it, then you can prevent it again. But if you just say, well, forgive me and let's move on, that doesn't work. So forgiveness is a process, and both parties have to understand that. You see, because having a relationship with somebody in the future is about whether or not they're reliable, whether they're dependable and trustworthy. Nobody wants to have a relationship with somebody who is unfaithful, who has proven time and time again to be unfaithful or they're not trustworthy. And that has to be rebuilt. So it is not about going back to the way things were before. Things have to be better than they were before. And I want to say this as well to those who have been offended. Do not say that you forgive somebody because it sounds good. Let me say I forgive him. Let me say I forgive her. I'm a Christian. I'm a child of God. Let me say that. It must come from your heart. It has to come from your heart. If it doesn't come from your heart, then no way. What does the word of God said? Jesus said, my heavenly Father will not forgive you if each of you from his heart does not forgive his brother his trespasses. You have to forgive from your heart. And so that cannot always happen in an instant. You have to watch that person earn back your trust. Trust is something that has to be built. It has to be built. It does not come with the click of a finger, the snap of a finger. So it's not about going back to the way things were before. It has to be fixed. Sometimes it's broken, but you could put the pieces back together again. If it's shattered, that's another thing. And I say this to you, true forgiveness frees both the forgiver and the forgiven. True forgiveness. It frees both of you. You see, one person cannot, at the end of the process, or one person says, forgive me. And you say, yes, I forgive you. And that person going away feeling good, yeah, and they feel free now because they've been forgiven. But you dig in horrors. That's not true forgiveness. And vice versa. Both of you at the end of the process must be free. Free to start over, free to decide whether or not you want to start over. Because at the end of the process, at the end of the counseling, at the end of the therapy, a decision has to be made. Because if one person has not dealt with the issue, the person who committed the offense has not dealt with the issue, then going back into that relationship, in that situation, means that you're setting yourself up for it to happen again. So true forgiveness, it frees both of them. Both of them are released from the effect of the mistake. So what I'm saying to you is this: forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation. The reconciliation can come maybe at the end of the process, and sometimes even at the end of the process, reconciliation does not happen. And you might be saying, but how could you say that? You're a Christian and love never fails, and God can fix anything. Yeah, God can fix anything. But I tell you something, both people have to be committed to the Lord and committed, when you remember Psalm 51, when David says, God, forgive me, he was saying, God, this will not happen again. When he repented, he said, God, this will not happen again. That's what, in effect, what he was saying. A lot of us, when we ask for forgiveness, we're saying, forgive me for what I did, full stop. And we're not ready to make that commitment to say it's not going to happen again. Or we might say it with our lips, but it doesn't resound from the heart. And sometimes even that you can't say it because you realize that, look, this, if you know for yourself, this thing could happen again, you know. And I'll tell you, any good counselor will pick that up, will understand that this person has not yet dealt with whatever the issue is. And sometimes, even as a counselor for me, I have to refer people because there's not everything I could deal with. Some people who have when they have an addiction, they have to sometimes go through a certain process that they need a professional for. Somebody might be addicted to sex. They need a professional for that. Sure, God can cure you. God can do miracles, yes. But if God doesn't do that, you have to go through the process. And there's some of us who are not, you know, there's so much that I can do as a pastor, as a counselor. Sometimes I have to say, listen, this person needs professional help. And we have Christians who are psychologists and psychiatrists. And I would recommend that because there are certain things that secular people, worldly people will tell it, but that's okay. And we tell it things like, you know, men stray and things happen. No, we don't. We have to stand for what we believe. God doesn't say that. So I would recommend, you know, Christian counsels. So I want to pause here for a second based on what we just shared. If anybody has a question or a comment based on what we just shared. Anybody? I don't know if Sister Patricia is on tonight, but she's the one who asked the question.
No, Dr. Richards, she's not. But you know, I just wanted to say, Dr. Richards, you know, when you get really hurt, when somebody really hurt you, Dr. Richards, and you would know because you were there when I went through a painful ride, you know, and it's not easy, but one of the things that I've come to learn now based on experience and as we grow in Christ, Dr. Richards, it is not about how we feel, but it's about what God says. And it will take some time. But once our heart is in that place that we want to do what God says to do, then the Holy Spirit will be the one to help us. Because Dr. Richards, I remembered, and I'm sharing my personal testimony, Dr. Richards. There are two incidents that you know about, you know, one personal and one with a boss that I had. And every morning as I woke up, family, I was talking about that. I feel sorry for Dr. Richards looking back now. I was talking about it over and over and over and over again. And Dr. Richards, the moment I recognized, and I told the Lord that, and that was my plan, this is what I do now. I said, Lord, this is how this person has hurt me, and this is how I feel towards them. But Father, you said, if I don't forgive them, you will not forgive me. Help me to forgive. And Dr. Richards, I started lying to myself. And don't hear what I'm not saying, huh? I started lying to myself to bring it to a reality. I actually started saying that I forgive, and I called their names. And even though I didn't feel it emotionally, I spoke it believing it, if it makes any sense. I didn't feel that I forgive the person because I was still hurting. But when I said that I forgive you, Dr. Richards, I said it with such authority. I said it with such faith, you know, and I believe because I did that and God saw my heart, I was able to win that battle. And so now I am free of that, Dr. Richards. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I didn't feel that I wanted to forgive them. But I said I forgive them, knowing that this is what God wanted me to do. And as I spoke it, it became, I heard myself saying it, and I was able to accept it and allow the word of God, you know, to bring healing into my life. Sister Christine, your hand is up.
Yeah, let me just say before Sister Christine, that's one thing. The process of that you go through in terms of the forgiveness. The healing process is for both parties. And sometimes, like in your situation, the person who has been hurt has to come to that place where they can say, I forgive you. It's not just a matter of the other person winning back the trust, but that person also has to deal with the hurt and the pain that they feel. And sometimes what they have to do is what you did. They have to speak it into being. They have to say, I forgive this person until it becomes a reality. Because if you leave it like that, sometimes it will continue to eat away at them. So sometimes we have to trust God. God, I'm hurting. I don't like what this person has done. And every day you're getting up, but God, I want to forgive. And Lord, I forgive them. And you speak it until it becomes a reality. You're not fooling yourself. You have to go, and you can't fool God, but you have to speak it to yourself, and it's part of the process. Okay? Yeah, Sister Christine.
Have a good night to everyone. Something I want to ask. When you tell somebody, I forgive you, but I don't forget, what does that mean?
Okay. We talked about that a little earlier on some time ago about forgiving and forgetting. You know, God, we often use the term, you know, that God says he would put we talk about the sea of forgetfulness. And God says, you know, as far as the east is from the west, so I've, you know, separated you from your sin, and it'll wash you and you'll be whiter than snow. All right? Forgetting is not an easy thing. Forgetting is not something, well, we know that God can't forget. Okay, now, sometimes when we say, I'll forgive you, but I won't forget you, it means that I haven't really forgiven you. All right, because forgetting doesn't mean I'm taking it out of my mind. Forgetting means I will not hold it against you again. That's what forgetting is. I'm not going to use this against you anymore. I gave the analogy of people who work and you get a letter, a disciplinary letter. That letter is only as good, you know, for 3 months. After that, they kind of refer to that letter. If within the 3 months you do something again, they could say, well, this is your second letter warning, this is your third letter. But after the 3 months, so it's there. You can see it, but you cannot use it against the person. And that's what the forgetting is. Forgetting means that I will not hold this against you. But so when you tell somebody, I forgive you, but I won't forget you, it means that I will always hold it against you. I will always. So it means that I haven't really forgiven. Forgiving people is giving them a clean slate. So this thing about, I forgive you, no, but you see, I ain't forgetting you. That should not come out of our mouths. All right, I hope I answered your question. Anyone else?
Sister Gail Gomez.
Good night, everyone. You know, what you're saying tonight is so real in a situation that, you know, a friend of mine is facing right now. And everything that you're saying here is exactly what is happening in that relationship. You know, she is asking for forgiveness because she has recognized that she was wrong in the situation. And she's asking for her husband for forgiveness, but he's not at the point. And I'm happy that you said that, because it's helping me now to be a little clearer in understanding the situation, that he has come to that place that he's unwilling to forgive. He's not at that point or that place that he's ready to forgive her yet, because he is still hurting, you know. So even though she is really sorry about the situation, he has not come to that place as yet. And while he's waiting to come to that place, she is going through a lot of tremendous pain and you know, by that rejection. Something I want to know if you can answer this question for me, which I'm sure you can. When a man says, I love my wife, but I'm not in love with her, what does that really mean?
Well, that's a good question. I think you have to ask each man that individually. But I suppose it means that I love you because I'm obligated to you, or my wife. As God says, love your enemies. So you know, you because loving is something that you do. So I love you. I treat you as a human being. I care about what happens to you. I will still protect you. I will still provide for you. But the passion that I feel, I don't feel that what's the type of love, eros, that eros love I don't feel that for you anymore. I don't have desire for you anymore. I don't feel to be intimate with you anymore. And that's what he's saying. I don't feel that. I used to feel that before. I don't feel that, when I think about you, my heart skip a beat, or I'm looking forward to seeing you. I don't feel that anymore. I care about you. I wouldn't want to see you out on the street. I don't want to divorce you. I don't want to, I care about you, but I just don't have those feelings anymore. You don't excite me anymore. And basically that is what a man is saying, or a woman, because I think women say that as well. That's basically what they're saying. All right, that the fire has gone out. And it takes, in a case of that, it takes therapy, counseling, sometimes to rekindle that fire. And sometimes it's not that it's completely gone, water, hasn't been thrown on it, but it's just dead. So you have to find some way to put some oxygen so that fire can be rekindled. And it's not always, the couple themselves are not always able to do that. Sometimes you need that intervention. You need a third party, someone who is trained and someone who cares to do that. All right, I hope that answers your question.
Sister Hyacinth?
Yes, I'm here. On the point of forgiveness, I will say that you will know to yourself if you have really forgiven somebody. If somebody has done you really wrong and you have forgiven them, maybe when you meet them, you probably might be able to still say hi to that person. To me, if you have not forgiven that person, you'd want to just pass them on the streets. You won't want to say hello or anything of the sort. And a simple good morning, because we say good morning, it comes from our breath, comes from God, so just say good morning and you go your way. So if you haven't forgiven that person, when you see them on the street, you would just want to just pass them straight. That's my response.
Thank you. And not only that, sometimes when you even think about them, you're disgusted, you're angry, upset, just that you don't even want to think about them. All right. So I agree with you. You will know. You will know when you've come to the place of forgiveness when
Dr.
regards
Richards.
to somebody. Yes.
Dr. Richards, what you just said there is the measuring stick. It's the measuring stick to how you know if you've truly forgiven someone. But when you think about them, you don't get, your blood don't crawl, you don't get upset. If whether you tell it to people or not, only you know what's going on with you. You might say, no, I'm good, I forgive and all these kind of things, but God knows your heart, and the individual, you will know from the moment you hear that person's name mentioned. This, when you tell yourself like you assume you're over it. You're not really over it, because from the time you hear them, you hear the name or something reminds you of them, your whole stomach start churning and that whole. So that's how you know. So when you have really forgiven them, you wish them the best. You actually find yourself praying and asking God to bless them, and that's the beauty of it. Gail.
Yes.
While I share the point of view that was just expressed there. My question is, while the person, be it the husband or the wife, is waiting for that person to reach that point of forgiveness, yes, you're praying, but what practical things can the individual do? Because remember, you're experiencing a lot of hurt and pain and everything. And it is so easy to shut down and stop doing a lot of things, which I don't support. But from your perspective, what are some of the things that the person can be done? As I said, in addition to praying, of course, because that is the cornerstone. What practical things that the persons can do? What are some of those practical things?
Well, in most of these cases, you need an intervention, because the two people, okay, look at what we did before when we did the series on Jesus Christ being the mediator. Man and God had a relationship, and then man sinned, and God had to remove him from his presence. And because of sin, man could not come back in the presence of God. So there needed to be a mediator. There needed to be someone who can act on behalf of both parties, who understands how both parties feels. And that is what usually happens in a situation like this, because the two people will not see eye to eye. They're different places. One is angry, one is full of anger and hurt and pain, and the other one is full of remorse, and these two can't come together. So you have to find somebody who's able to help that one person deal with the anger and the hurt and the pain that they feel, and at the same time help the other person to understand what the person is feeling, the other person is feeling, and to deal with their own issues. So situations at least calls for an intervention. There's no easy fix, especially depending on the depth of whatever happened, whatever it is, if it's infidelity or whatever it is. And even that affects some people more than others. Some people are able, maybe because of what they've experienced in the past or how they grew up or the environment they were in, they're able to forgive that more easily than others. Some people grow up in an environment where their father and their mother lived together for years and they don't know anything about, the father looking at another woman or the woman looking at another mother looking at another man. So when it happens to them, it shatters them because they just don't know that. That is not a part of their life, a part of their psyche, a part of them. So it's difficult for them to deal with that. And that's why I'm saying professional help is needed. And professional may not necessarily mean, when I talk about professional in terms of people who are addicted to certain things, I'm talking about professional like psychologists and things, but professional in this case may mean a counselor, a pastor, someone who is gifted in dealing with situations like that. You need intervention. There's no way, well, let me not go to that extreme. It is very difficult for two people who are in that place. Remember, they're separated by hurt and anger and pain and mistrust. And all of that has to be erased. But that doesn't go just like that. It go the click of a finger. So the person who is feeling the anger has to be able to ventilate that in an environment where it is safe to do so. And the person who is remorseful, you have to get them to understand that this person that they hurt, you have to win back that trust. You have to do whatever it takes. And even if that person is willing to do so, one of the things that has to happen is that you must be patient. And I know, you could say, well, how long you'll be patient for? How long will this person be vexed? How long he will be vexed with me? But those are not questions that you can ask, because the longer it is, it means that that person really was hurt. It will hurt in a way that, is difficult, and it would take a lot of time. So it takes time and it takes intervention for situations like that. So what I would say to the person, one, seek intervention. Two, continue doing, love the person. If you love your husband, she loves her husband, continue doing for him the things you would normally do, even if sometimes he rejects, because men do that sometimes. And a lot of us, not just men too. One of the things, I'm not sure if we're going to come to that. Sometimes we exercise a sense of power over somebody. They did us wrong, so they have to pay. All right, and we exercise that power. We're going to come to that. That's one of the things we have to talk about. And you have to realize that the counselor has to get that person to understand, listen, this is not how you deal with things. Exercising power over someone who is not even the enemy, somebody you're supposed to love, is not godly. It's not the way God would want to handle it. That's not the way God handled us, and that's not the way you should handle your wife. But again, let her continue doing, let her continue loving, let her continue doing all that she needs to do. The thing that she would have done before, and even go the extra mile. That's as much as she can do. But what is seriously important is counseling and intervention. Because if that doesn't happen, this is going to be prolonged and it may lead in the opposite direction. Okay? All right, the time is 9:25. Let me just...
Sister Hyacinth hand is up, Dr. Richard.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Sister Harrison, go ahead.
Dr. Richards, I'm assuming that the person is a believer. And in addition to what you said, I think this person has to learn to worship God. Because there's going to be a time the counselor, you'll see a counselor maybe once a week or twice a week. What happens to the other times? There are times when these negative things just keep coming, and yes, she loves her husband, and her mind is going to be racing. And that's the time she'll have to choose to worship God. And in worshiping God, I believe she would get some answers. God will give her some strategies to how her way forward, how she should deal with the situation that her husband seems not to want to forgive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so thank you so much, Sister Harrison. Let me just say this as well. When we talk about counseling intervention, it's not about two people going to sit down in front of a counselor for an hour or so, and then they go back and then they come back the next time. No, there's a process, as I told you. And in that process, there are things that need to be done during the time, between the times that they meet. So you get homework, you get things to do. You may get certain scriptures to read and come back and say, what does this mean? It's a whole, I can't go through it now. So it's not just a matter of, okay, let's talk, and then you go back and then you come back. And so how it was, no. There are things that are done. So let's say we meet in once a week on a Friday, from Saturday to Thursday. There are things that both parties have to do either together, but both together and individually. And they have to come and report back. That's part of the process. Okay, so I want you to understand that. What you said there too about worship and all of that is part of the process. All of that. Okay, so I agree with you and I hear you. But I'll tell you something again, and let me say it again. When trust is broken, it is very difficult to build back. And it takes time. It takes, you have to be long-suffering. It takes patience to rebuild what has been broken down. Because you can take a bulldozer and break down a house, but to build it back up again, you have to do it brick by brick. So we've got to understand that. All right, so I see it's 9:28. I don't know if anybody else's hand is up. We're going to have to stop here for this evening and continue on Tuesday. Are there any more hands, Pastor Nicole?
No, Dr. Richards.
Okay, so, we're going to have to stop here today. We will continue on Tuesday, God's willing, at the same time, because we have more to talk about concerning this forgiving. And in the meantime, please, let us all reflect. Let us all do some self-examination. See if we are guilty of maybe not forgiving, or maybe guilty of not even repenting. And it's all of this is for us to really do some introspection. Because as believers, we want to be better. And we want to live the way God has designed for us to live. Amen. So have a wonderful night, people. Thank you. I cover you right now, and I declare that the word that has been spoken, the word that God has sent, will take root in your heart, in our hearts, and would bear fruit, and that we would be better, and we would know God, and we would be strong. So I bless you tonight. I declare sweet sleep. Have a great weekend. People, COVID-19 has not gone away. I see people are free now. They're not wearing masks. They're doing all sorts of things. Please, COVID-19, we still have cases every day in the hundreds, and people are still dying. So not because you're not hearing it on the front burner or the head of the news, it means this has gone over. So please be careful. Please be careful. God bless you. Pastor Nicole, back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Richards. Please don't run yet. Please don't run, family. Just one quick thing. We are looking for volunteers, Dr. Richards and I, ministry, we're looking for volunteers to form a committee for our family day. If you would like to be a part of that committee, please let us know. And you can reach out to Sister Noel please reach out to Sister Murnell and let Sister Murnell know that you're interested in being a part of the committee. And this committee is to help us to plan for our gathering, our family coming together in the month of December.
Mhm.
And I want to remind you again, we are not fasting in November, people. We are not fasting in November. A lot of people reaching out and asking. We are not fasting. We fast on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of December. What we do in November is prepare our body for the fast, right? And in order to prepare your body for the fast, which is the 24 hours, 3 days, 24 hours, water only, we are asking you to come off of the animal flesh for the month of November, and that you cut down on your rice and your flour in the 3rd week of November, and the last week of November, no sugar, and let your last meal be at 7 p.m. so that you're able to do what you need to do. All right. So Sister Murnell, is it okay to give your number out?
I think she just did. I think she just put her number in the chat.
All right, so if you can look in the chat,
Mhm.
and if you can look in the chat, there's Sister Murnell's number. And so for those of you who don't know how to manipulate the chat, her number is 464. Okay,